All right, in this video, we'll be looking specifically at class Insecta and talking about some of the specifics of that class. And then in the next video, we'll be looking at the classes in just a general overview of the orders, and just to give a couple of brief sentences about each of the orders, nothing in specific. You could spend a lot of time studying each one, but we're not going to. All right, so here's some pictures, some random pictures concerning the class Insecta, and let's see what we got here. All right, so this shows the different mouth parts of an insect, and again, we said last time that the mouth parts of an insect have a lot to do with what they're eating. So you can see here, very good picture for that. The grasshopper eats a lot of leaves, and so it has these kind of grinding bits. This mosquito it sucks blood, and so it has a mouth part that's like a long tube. This is a butterfly mouth. It's got basically a long tongue to get the nectar out of the flowers. Houseflies have kind of this sponge sort of thing. They basically spit on things, dissolve them, and then sponge up the goo. And so all mouth parts in insects come in pairs. There's not, even this tube here has these paired kind of appendages to it. For locomotion, go back here. You can see great little GIF on the how they move. Their legs kind of move in these triangles. So you can see two on the right, one on the left is matched, and then the vice versa. And some of them can actually walk on the surface of the water. These are the only invertebrates that are able to fly. Not all insects are able to fly, but most of them are. And even some of the orders that do fly have species that don't. And so, but most of them do fly. The wings of an insect are not homologous to vertebrate wings. Vertebrate wings are part of the vertebrate arm, whereas insect wings kind of grow out of their back and so have a completely different kind of thing going on. Most insects have two pairs of wings, except for the one order that only has one pair of wings. These are like flies. They have two pairs of muscles that help in flight, and this kind of shows how those muscles work. We're not going to go into the specifics of how they work, but you can kind of get an idea by looking at that picture. All right. Next idea here is respiration. So for respiration, they have something called the tracheal system. And these are thin-walled tubes that branch into every part of the body. They have an opening called the spiracle that opens to the outside. Oxygen is able to get in and go into the various parts of the body. And because they have an open circulatory system, this would allow gas exchange to happen throughout the body cavity. Well-developed nervous system, don't have any pictures of that at all. Well-developed nervous system with lots of sensory input. That's pretty much an insect's whole jam, is being able to detect sensory input from the outside. Depending on the type of insect, they're going to have very specialized ability in that regard. So a little bit about metamorphosis, which is something that most insects are going to be doing. There are a couple of types of metamorphosis that are seen. First one is called ametabolous, which is they do not have metamorphosis. So ametabolous is more of a direct development, which we saw in the entonathans. Hemimetabolous, this is an incomplete metamorphosis, like you see on the right. Incomplete metamorphosis represents more of a gradual kind of change where the young look different than the adult, but not completely different. So they kind of have this gradual change. The young are typically called nymphs, and their wings develop externally through successive molts or molts. So you can see there in that nymph, the wings are really small, but then the wings will get bigger as the adult grows. Holometabolous is complete metamorphosis, and this represents different stages of life. And so this is probably what you're familiar with. You start with the larva that looks completely different than the adult. And then there is a pupa stage, and that pupa stage is what's called differentiation, where the animal becomes different essentially. And then the adult stage is where the wings develop and you have the full-on adult. In most insects, the adult stage serves for reproductive purposes only. That's not all, though. In some insects, like butterflies are a great example. They live a pretty long time as adults. But in a lot of insects, particularly aquatic insects, the most of their life is spent in the water, and then they have a short adult life to eat a little bit and then breed and then die. Insects have a very, very complicated behavior as far as animals that we've talked about so far. A lot of social behavior. They communicate through chemicals called pheromones, which are basically hormones that are released into the air. They can produce sound to produce or to communicate, which is also kind of a new idea on in the evolutionary front. A lot of social behavior. So there's this, I don't think I have a picture for it. I don't. There's a type of social behavior called eusocial or true social. And this is a complex social structure. You see there the bees and the termites represented here. Which is there's like almost like a caste system among the insects where there's worker bees or workers. These are usually inactive females. Drones, which are the active males, active meaning reproductively active. There's a queen. In termites, there's even like soldier classes and scout classes, the ones that have wings and can fly around and find new mounds or whatever. Bees are very similar. Wasps, not so much. Ants, though, have a complicated social structure. So very, very interesting social structures with insects, quite complex. Ants even farm and bury their dead and have waste piles, and it's very, very complex structure for them. Insects fit into one of two groups typically. I guess there's a third group that would be no more of a neutral, but there are beneficial insects, and usually a beneficial insect is called beneficial because it is either a pollinator, meaning that it spreads pollen from one plant to another, like a bee or a butterfly, or it's an insect that eats harmfuls, like a praying mantis, dragonflies are examples of that as well. Some wasps also can do that. And then harmful animals are typically ones that destroy crops or destroy living spaces or are pests like the mosquito there and spread disease. There's a lot of things that are used for insect control. Um, in general, broad spectrum herbicides, pesticides have done a lot more harm than good. What I mean by broad spectrum is that they're just they kill everything, and so they end up killing the beneficials and the harmfuls at the same time, which is not good. And so other types of controls have been considered, things like bacterial control, viral control, fungal control. There's a lot of home remedies that really work, like diatomaceous soil and some other things. There's even been talk of what would the world look like, for instance, if mosquitoes, which are the number one disease causing vector in the world, what if we eliminated them? Would that would it cause a shift in the ecosystem? So that does create some more ethical conversation concerning the ecological development and ecological niche of some insects. But in general, they fit into these two groups, harmful and beneficial.